Hello everyone, this is Timothy Mark with Alexandria.
How's everybody doing today?
And we are the Tickle Trunk of Horrors, also known as World Paranormal Research Society. Today's topic is going to be on transgender. Alexandria has released a book. It's called It's Complicated, Am I Transgender? You can find that on Amazon.com. We'll put a link in the description if you're interested in purchasing the book. And we have a special guest today, Carla Cox, and it's going to be pretty awesome. Carla Cox is I don't know if the proper way to describe her as a transgender or transsexual performer, but she's definitely going to be giving us a call here in a few minutes.
And before we head into our very, very exciting show today and our guests, a few things that I always like to cover in our podcast. Today in horror, the films that were released today in horror, today being May 10th. And I don't know, some of these you may not remember, but horror really is has a huge audience, so it doesn't matter what year they come out. If you're a horror fan, you would know about it. And The Brighton Strangler came out May 10th, 1945. The Phantom Speaks Again, 1945. It Lives Again, 1978. Also, FX2 came out May 10th, 1991. Cursed 3, Blood Sacrifice, came out 1991. Also, Battlefield Earth 2000 and Dog Soldiers came out today, May 10th, 2002. And I know this may not be horror related, but I'm also a huge YouTube fan, and today is Bono's birthday. He was born today, May 10th, 1960, so he's now 58 years old.
And there you go. He's 58 years old and still doing them young girls.
Okay,
so,
wow.
Well, I'm just saying, he got in trouble about it not too long ago. Who knows what happened to that or is going to become of that, but it's 2 underage girls, so.
Okay, well, I mean, when you're rich, famous, and you have all that money, and maybe you got so much time on your hands in between gigs, I mean, I'm not condoning it, but certainly, Well,
Elvis Presley himself was a pedophile. I mean, we know that everybody knows in the world that he married Priscilla he got with Priscilla when she was 14, so that's pretty sickening.
Well, it is. I mean, there's still a child in my eyes, and I think that's very inappropriate. But people throughout history have done that, and I think
Chuck Berry, Jerry Lee Lewis, Elvis Presley. And
I think the more bigger the person is as a celebrity, it's that the media attention really doesn't get that much coverage as it would with an average person.
It would get a lot of coverage in today's world, but back then in the 50s, they definitely hit it very well.
That seems to be the case. And again, I'm very, very happy. My 10th book today, It's Complicated, Am I Transgender? Very pleased with that book. Available on Amazon, and we will post a link to the book. Again, thanks to Timothy for helping out with the book and its process. It's been a little bit of a tedious process, but nevertheless, it's out there for all.
Very informative book, and if anybody's into supporting gay culture, pride, anything of that nature,
transgender,
it's a very informative transgender book. It takes on a lot of subject and questions and answers a lot of questions. And again, it's called It's Complicated, Am I Transgender? And
I thought it was a time that a book came out that kind of shed some light on some of the myths and misconceptions in regards to transgender. There's a lot of movements, a lot of celebrities. And before we go into having our special guest, I also wanted to make note that I'm of Métis descent, and there was Cale Mackenzie was the first Canadian transgender judge that was elected as a judge. He's also he's also a Métis person. And as well, in Texas, the Texas mayor of New Hope was actually now voted out, and Jess Herberts, actually transgender judge in New Hope, Texas, was now voted out. And again, Cale Mackenzie, the first Canadian Métis judge elected as a judge, transgender.
Yeah, I think this whole bathroom issue with the transgender, I got mixed feelings on it. because I think that if you look like a man and you're wanting to use the female restroom, that's completely wrong. And I say that because if you look enough, if you're a transgender or transsexual and you look enough like a woman, nobody's going to call you out on walking into the female restroom. And plus, they don't have urinals in there anyway, so they would have to close the door and use a stall. But if you're a bearded man and you clearly are a man, and you're trying to go in the female restroom, that's just ridiculous.
And well, there could be a lot of fear factor or controversy when you have little children that are in the bathroom too. Them not quite understanding, they may not be at the age where they understand what a transgender person is, and they could be scared going into a public bathroom, and until security could be called. I'm not saying it's right, but I'm just saying we have to kind of deal with the realities of society when small children are using the bathroom and not realizing it is a transgender person.
Right, and that's my concerns with the kids. But again, if you look enough like a female, you should be able to walk into the female bathroom without anybody calling you on it anyway. Or if you're a transgender male and you look enough like a male, you should be able to walk into the male bathroom without anybody calling you on it anyway. So, but if you look like the opposite sex and you're trying to use the opposite sex restroom, then that's where I have a problem with it. So.
And it becomes, again, maybe for children, a safety factor, a fear issue. A lot of things go on when a lot of parents are really not properly educating their children on what transgender and what transsexual individuals are. And that's the fault of the parents, because there is a lot of literature out there. And in my book, again, I do have a section on how parents should really speak to their children in regards to transgender individuals. And again, I'm very proud of the book, and it also has a section on two-spirited individuals in my book. So it covers a lot of information. It has resource guide in there, so it's really a very dynamic book that tries to misspell the myths again, and how parents can properly educate their children on what a transgender individual truly is, and not to fear them.
Yes. And so the question would be, what's the difference between a cross-dresser, a transgender, and a transsexual? I still don't know what the difference myself is between a transgender and a transsexual.
Well, transgender really is, in a short version, and I mean, I don't want to sort of spoil it in my book, but really it's biologically you're born with a set of anatomy, and you realize soon, or depending on when you realize in your life, that your inner feelings or your inner identity does not gel or is not in sync with the parts that you're born with. And that begins the transgender, because gender identity really comes from inside, and what you feel. You may have been born with a penis, but you don't feel like a male, and
you feel like a female. And I think the show Roseanne's tackling that issue a lot with the kid
that is dressing, her grandson that is dressing with female with dresses and stuff. They're trying to not be hard and downsizing, because the mother is trying to not squelch his creativity and being an innovative individual, being true to yourself. And I think my book on transgender really kind of tackles the subject, as we only get one go at this life, so if you're not happy, what's the point, really? I mean, you have to be true to yourself, and society has done a lot of harm in regards to, again, there was a recent murder of a transgender individual in Dallas, I think it was on the 10th, and they I don't know.
This is the 10th. You mean the 10th of April?
No, I think maybe it was the 8th or the 9th party of May, but it was just publicized today in Dallas, the murder of a transgender female. So the numbers are very high, and really all it is ignorance, a lack of proper knowledge, and an understanding. And my philosophy, being a civil rights activist, is all lives matter. And it's just really ignorance and people bucking the system in regards to what society tries to shove down our throat on what is right and what is wrong.
Yeah, it's I watched a YouTube video about ancient Egypt yesterday, and they said that males and females both wore makeup in ancient Egypt, which I felt was interesting. Not only that, but they also shaved off all their body hair and they wore wigs.
That was, I believe, it was individuals of higher status that did that.
Yeah, it was. The ones that was not of higher status actually kept their own hair. But it's kind of stupid that they wore wigs made of human hair. And the question in that video was, why was that less dangerous as wearing your own hair?
Well, I guess, I mean, then you don't really have to worry about styling hair or having your servant style it. I mean, you have a wig that is ready-made. It's going to look the same day in and day out. It's going to save a lot of hassle, a lot of maintenance, a lot of upkeep when you can just simply just slide it on a bald head and you're ready to rock and roll. So, you know,
Yeah.
Really a lot of affluent people, they had servants or slaves attend to their every whim and need, and they really didn't do anything on their own. So if you didn't have to look after your hair and just slide on a wig, well, I mean, there you go.
But going into your book where you talk about the two-spirit people of Native Americans that were two-spirit people that were born males and what they felt more like females, I know you addressed that in your book, and that was definitely a learning experience for me when I read that. I had no idea that Native Americans, that transgender went all the way back to Native Americans.
And it was documented in several documents as well. And really, I mean, a lot of nations, the elders in the Aboriginal community do not frown on it, and they're a little bit more accepting in regards to what a two-spirited individual is than the Anglo community is, and they've embraced that. And I mean, to be called a two-spirited person really is you know, it's been present really in Aboriginal communities for countless generations, and it actually predates the LGBTQ terminology. And really, when you think about transgender or even people, two-spirited people in Indian country, many people may visualize images of unicorns and rainbows, Donna Summer and 70s disco balls. But when you're trying to explain the concept of two-spirit outside the Indian country, it becomes more complicated. And actually, a lot of you may not know that the two-spirited native culture went underground really to avoid detection and persecution, because they really predate any kind of more modern movement.
And we'll be getting a call from Carla Cox any moment now. And again, she's a transgender or transsexual performer, so she'll be giving us a call any second.
And for all of you out there, a little bit of a tidbit that may not be aware, the term two-spirit was actually coined in 1990 in Winnipeg, Canada, as a means of unifying various gender identities and expressions of Native American and First Nations and Indigenous individuals. And the term really is not a specific definition of gender, sexual orientation, or any other self-determining catchphrase, but it's really, again, an umbrella term.
Yeah, you know, when you look back at some of the transsexuals in film or transgender in film, one of the James Bond girls was actually a transsexual, and that's a pretty interesting fact. And it's talked about in the book, I believe. I don't know if it's, I think it is mentioned in the book.
She's mentioned in the book as well. And I mean, a lot of people may not realize that these transgender celebrities are truly bringing it more to the forefront.
I think we got Carla calling right now. Hold on for a minute. Hello, welcome to the Tickle Trunk Horror Show. Is this Carla Cox?
This is. Hi.
Hey, how you doing?
pretty good. How are you?
I'm okay. We were just talking about transgender and transsexual performers, and one of the Bond girls was actually a transgender performer.
I love it. I did not know that.
Yeah, it's there's actually a book that just came out called "It's Complicated, Am I Transgender?" and it's actually talked about in the book. But before we get into all that, there's a little known fact about Carla Cox is she's a horror fan. So, am I correct to say that?
You asked me when we talked earlier, and I actually, when the movies are over, I do love like horror films, but I typically don't like to sign up for going to them. But once it's over, I'm like, oh, I really enjoyed that. But yeah. I hate to love horror, so yeah, it's somewhat true and somewhat not.
So what would you say the film is that you've seen in your life that probably scared you the most?
Those paranormal activity movies scared the living shit out of me all the time.
Yeah.
Especially if I watched them at night.
Yeah, they were definitely good movies. I liked them as well.
After they're over.
Yeah. Speaking of the paranormal activity movies, and I don't know because we didn't get into it in conversation earlier, but in your lifetime, have you ever had any paranormal experiences?
I have not.
Okay.
And I'm not to say that I don't believe in them, but I have not experienced any.
Well, you're definitely very fortunate on that end to stay away from those.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. So we want to just tap into a little bit of what you do. You're a performer and you host a lot of events. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And so, can you tell us, for the audience listening out there, like, what kind of problems do you have as being a transgender or transsexual performer?
I'm pretty fortunate because I don't really face a lot of issues with that. Although, not to say there are definitely not issues at all, but I don't live my life as a woman, and so I don't really have a lot of issues with that. I do, just being gay, however, face a lot of, not a lot, but issues with that. Of course, growing up and going through school and stuff like that, I was teased and bullied and a lot, but I think it prepared me later on for life to face the real world, and it made me a stronger person in the long run. So it's not necessarily something that wasn't a good thing for me.
So you're, just so our listeners can kind of get an understanding, you're saying that when you're in performance mode, you're dressed and your outwardly appearance is a female. So when you're just going about your everyday life and, you know, going to parties and having drinks and dinner with friends, are you dressed as a female? Or if you maybe, because some of our listeners may not understand that.
Oh, yes. No, I don't live my everyday life as a woman because I don't feel the need to, you know, being trans doesn't necessarily mean that you augment your body and you live your life as opposite. It just means you think, you know, in your mind that your body and your spirit don't really match up. And I've always felt like that as a kid, but I think my drag has become my outlet. So I'm okay with not living as a woman because growing up, I've always thought I was a girl in my head anyways, ever since I was little. And I didn't really understand it, but I'm a Pisces, so I'm a daydreamer, so it really wasn't that big of an issue for me. And then it all made sense later on in life. And so I don't live my life every day as a woman, but in my head, I am a woman. So therefore, it's not an issue for me, and I'm comfortable with the life I have.
So do you foresee ever in the future as doing that, or you plan on just keep going the way it's going?
To be honest, I've thought about it, and I'm not sure because if you would have asked me more than that, if you would ask me when I thought I was gay, if I would have thought I was trans, I would have been like, well, hey, like, life has brought me to this point, and I can't say that life won't bring me to the point where I live my life as a woman every day. So I'm not sure. I'm not close-minded to it, of course, but I don't see it right now. But it could happen. Who knows?
Right. And what's the hardest part of, and I would guess it would be like the shoes or whatever, but what's the hardest part of dressing like a female? Like, what would you think the hardest part of that would be?
The shoes are pretty easy depending depending on how complicated you want to get with them. But good-looking suits can take a while to get on. I would say keeping my mood right. When I start doing my makeup, if I have to mess up a little or something like that, I get in this little shitty mood, and I'm like, okay, snap out of it. You got to be around people and be in a good mood. So I would say keeping myself in a good mood, because I can get real into it, and sometimes that can take my mood down. I'm like, I want to be as perfect as possible, and that's just not possible. So I just have to snap myself out of that. So keeping my mood in a good place is always my most difficult thing.
Well, let me ask you, as far as Carla Cox, like what music does Carla Cox listen to? What type of music do you prefer?
I literally love every genre of music there is. However, I don't perform every genre of music. I generally perform top 40. I love R&B, but I have a little hip hop and a little country side of me, and a little. I mean, I literally love everything. If it's got good vocals to it and I can sing with it, I am all about it.
Do you have a CD out there yet, or are you working on a CD?
Of me singing?
Yeah.
I really don't. I know that's a real big popular thing right now, especially with the RuPaul girls, but I don't think anybody would get into me singing. You can catch me in the car singing with somebody, but not on the CD yet.
Could you kind of maybe take or sort of set the stage, or take some of our listeners into, and I really like this phrase that says the sexy house bitch at the Capitol Club. Can you kind of sort of give maybe a Reader Digest version to our listeners? What goes on? What is the sexy house bitch all about? Other than them getting their own maybe visual perception? Because I'm actually curious myself.
When I actually first put that up on Facebook, I was the only female impersonator to be working at the club that I work at every Friday in Columbia. It's called the Capitol Club. And it's basically like the Barbie doll of the house. Like, especially gay men, particularly, they love women, the beauty of women, the glamour of it all, and to have somebody that is the only female impersonator working there, you kind of are the sexy house bitch of the club.
Right.
But my sister Paris LaFaris works there with me now, so I'm no longer the sexy. I'm one of the sexy.
Wow.
But as far as that saying goes, I guess you could say that about the other club I work with every Saturday night in Augusta, Georgia, and that's Club Ed's, and I'm definitely the sexy bitch, house bitch there. So it's basically just the lady of the house.
Wow. Do you, because you've mentioned Georgia, then you've mentioned South Carolina. I'm originally from Canada, so I'm not familiar. Do you think that being a performer like you are in different areas of the country, is it easier, harder, or like I said, you've stayed basically in the area where you are in the country?
Well, basically in the South, it would be very hard in the deep South, I would imagine.
You mean just to perform, period, or like traveling?
Well, just in your performance, being dressing up in your outlet appearance as a woman, is it harder, you think, in the South, or does it really matter? Because in America, values and concepts can vary greatly from the North, the South. I find that out myself.
It's hard to say because, of course, I grew up here and this is where I work, and I would never want to compare what I've gone through here to somebody, say, in the Midwest, because I'm sure it's pretty hard there too. So, right. I mean, it's definitely been difficult, but can't compare it to anything because that's all I really know as far as what's harder.
Because I know the transgender and different movements are huge in the UK. Have you ever thought of maybe one day going to the UK and taking a performance to the UK?
Absolutely. I love to travel, and if that ever came my way, I would definitely jump on board to be a part of that.
Yeah, because I think, like I said, they're very embracing there, and it's just the culture there and the lifestyle there is very, very huge. And I also read that you went to Lacey Cosmetology School or Center School. What did you think about that? Was that sort of something that, again, when you said you felt you were born you should have been born a girl, you felt like a girl as a child, that would be just the icing on the cake, I think.
It's definitely kind of all influence. I have a very creative side. Ever since I was younger, I've always done arts and crafts and just been very creative and hands-on in creating things. It was something I kind of did right or shortly after high school because I was just kind of like partying and not doing anything, and the boyfriend I had at the time was just like, okay, you need to get serious about something, and I was sitting there really hard trying to figure out what I wanted to do because growing up it was just like, wanted to be a teacher, wanted to be a dancer, I wanted to be an artist, and nothing really just ever stuck or like made sense to me as like something I would commit to. And so when I went to hair school, it was something just like that. It was something that I was like, okay, I think I get into this, but my heart was never ever really in it. And so it was a good experience, of course, but the school that I went to wasn't all that. And of course, everything led me to what I do now, which is the only thing in my life I've ever really said, this is what you were meant to do. This is what you are here for. And so it was a good experience, but it wasn't necessarily something that I was really into as much as I am what I do now.
Let me ask you a question. As far as your family, have they been supportive in your goals?
My family is actually great. Like, I have 2 lesbian aunts, and before I even knew how to say that I was gay, or they were there for me from the get-go, and they come to my shows and everything. My mom knows, however, we don't really talk about it.
Wow.
And it's not so much her, it might be me too, because I think that would be more uncomfortable for me, but she's good. Like, I was an extra for Magic Mike too, and on Easter, whenever it came out, we actually all sat down together and watched it, and she seemed to enjoy it, but we didn't really talk about it.
Right. But, you know, you were mentioning about doing arts and crafts and stuff, but isn't it cool that you get to do arts and crafts on yourself every single day? Isn't that awesome? That's a dream job.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's like why I said I think everything built up to lead me to where I am today, because all of that, you know, added up and made it so easy for me to do this and love this so much, because there's so many different levels of all those little things that I wanted to do as a kid.
And
so it's been awesome.
I have a question for you, because I just love your cover photo on Facebook, and that's a scene from The Garden of Good and Evil. And I've watched that movie, and that woman in that movie, like her persona and everything about her was absolutely amazing. And that scene that you have when she's in her gown and the gentleman is looking. I mean, I think I've watched that movie 10 times over. There's just something about that movie and everything about it. And when I seen your cover, I thought, wow, okay, great.
Yeah, she was actually a very good friend of mine, and she has a lot to do with who I am as a person and as a performer. So I put that up after she passed, because it really, she's the first person that I've been really close to that's passed. And so in her memory, and especially through my success that I've experienced, I keep her with me, and so that's why I have that up there.
Okay, I got a question for you. As a hairy male, because I'm a hairy male, and I don't.
I thought I was.
So
I was like, I'm not hairy.
No. I know you're not, but that's why I'm going to ask you this question. As a hairy male, for me, and you going through cosmetology school and stuff like that, like, what's the best way for hairy men to get rid of the body hair that they don't want?
Can I ask that you don't want?
Yeah.
Well, what area?
Well, back, private area, stuff of that nature. I mean, I hate shaving certain areas, but you know.
Yeah. And you want to do this like for the long run?
Yes.
I would say laser removal. But if you don't want to do all of that, waxing is probably the best way, because it lasts a lot longer.
Okay.
But that's a lot more painful.
Yeah.
So if you want to shave it, just get it in like a tub of hot water and soak in there for a little while, and then use a clean shaver every time, shave, and then right after you get out of that, take a cold shower, and then when you get out, dry off, and then take alcohol and pat it wherever you shaved so it's cleansed.
Wow.
And you should be good to go.
that sounds very painful.
Yeah. Well, the shaving and the alcohol and all that's not that bad, unless you cut yourself, then I wouldn't.
Yeah. No, I just thought that you probably had some secrets to that. You know, I just got body hair in places I don't like it, so I do keep it off, but I thought, you know, laser removal probably is the best route to go.
Yeah, and the quickest. You won't have to worry about it anymore.
Yeah.
I had a question for you. For everybody that's listening, you have an event that's coming up at the Edge nightclub on May 12th. Could you sort of tell our listeners a little bit of what's going to happen? It says it's a great, big, fabulous show. What are these shows sort of consist of?
Different things. The club I work at Edge is part of this place called the Metropolis Complex, and it consists of a resort, and then there's a hotel. Then there's a bar for like socializing in the afternoon and all that stuff, and there's a pool there. There's 2 pools there actually, and then there's a club next to it. And some of the events that we have consist of like the groups that come in through the resort to stay for the weekend. They might be different kink things, and they could be a group of bears. It's all types of different things, and sometimes we go on events for them on Saturday nights. But the Great Big Fabulous Show is something I have every Saturday. It's just what they call the show there on Saturday night.
Wow. And are you going to, because I know every city around the globe has various pride parades and pride events. Are you going to be going to, I think Augusta has a pride parade. Are you going to be involved in that or just attending that?
Absolutely. I'm on the board for Augusta Pride, actually, so I'm definitely going to be involved in that. That's going to be June 21st through the 23rd. It's going to be exciting this year. And I'm also involved with SC Pride, too. We have something coming up called Outfest on the 2nd of June.
Wow, so you're pretty, I mean, you're performing at all these different events because you've got quite a few coming up in the next little while, and then again you said you sat on the board for Augusta Pride, so I think that's a really amazing that you're kept busy with that.
Yeah, I'm really lucky. I'm really feel blessed with everything I'm doing right now, and I'm happy.
So I'm gonna get political with you for a moment.
Okay.
What do you think of the bathroom issues that's been in the media for the last 2 years?
To be honest, it's a weird topic for me because not that I see a lot of the bad sides, but I do see some of that, and then I see both sides for different reasons. Because even before that issue ever came up, it was always something that was weird because I was like, well, I'm in drag. Do I go to a boys' bathroom or the girls' bathroom? But going to the boys' bathroom in drag is like even weirder than you're just like, it's just weird. And I think one thing about being trans, because if you just are comfortable with yourself and who you are, you don't stick out that much. Because I've been in high horse drag at a gas station with big hair and hooker boots, and because I'm comfortable with who I am and what I look like, going to the bathroom, nobody ever looked at me twice. So it wasn't something that, when you're uncomfortable with yourself and you're not sure of yourself, you stick out a lot more, and people notice that, and that's what tends to make people look at you. And so it's a weird topic for me because I see both sides of it, and I don't think, I'm definitely in favor for people going to the bathroom that they feel most appropriate with. Okay. But I see all the other sides about,
I have another question for you. I got a chance to meet Elvira back in 2008, and I got to meet her in costume, and then I got to meet her later on out of costume, and she explained like how she made her breasts look bigger, and she used a push-up bra, and then she used makeup. So see, when I was I look at certain people's pictures, and it seems like they have breasts, but actually they're doing something similar to what Elvira does. And and do you find that to be a difficult thing to do, or?
Making titties is the best thing to do. I love Elvira, and that's actually one of my favorite things to drag. There's 2 things. I love having fingernails on, like having my nails done, and I love breasts. They are just life to me, and so I don't find it difficult to do at all. It can be painful sometimes. How does she make her breasts bigger?
She has this thing she was describing to me in her dress that actually forces them, I guess, boosts them up or whatever, but then she uses makeup to give them more depth, if that makes sense.
Yeah, contouring them.
Yeah, because I met her as Elvira, and then when she came up to me as Cassandra Peterson herself, I didn't even know who she was, and so that was really strange for me. But
it wasn't a buzzkill, was it?
Well, she doesn't look like Elvira. Let's put it that way. She's Cassandra Peterson, so she is Elvira, but she does not look like Elvira as Cassandra Peterson. So yeah, I guess it kind of was a buzzkill. Yeah, but yeah, because it looks like it would be a painful thing to do for a male to do something similar to what she was doing.
Yeah, I use duct tape, so depending on how long I'm in drag, if I'm in it for a few hours, it can be painful, like taking it off. But for the most part, it's not that bad.
And
It'd be more painful not to have any titties.
Yeah, that probably would be. But I think the message that I'm getting from you and what you're trying to portray is that without self-confidence and being able to shake your booty where any time of the day and be proud of who you are. I mean, that's the message. If you've got self-esteem and you've got confidence just to walk in or to strut in there with your shoulders held high, you can rule the world, and people can yell or say whatever they want. But I mean, without that self-confidence, I mean, you're not going to really accomplish too much. But if you have that, I mean, your possibilities are completely limitless, because that's what it's all about.
I mean, the world sucks, and that's just the fact, and that's the way it is. And you only get one life, so you definitely need to make the most of it and live it to the fullest. And that's something a lady Chablis from the Midnight of the Garden Good Eagle, she taught me that a lot, and she definitely did the most with her life, and I plan on doing the same thing. And I wish the best for everyone that wants to be trans and all that, and to do the same. I encourage it.
Yeah, that's the question I was going to ask you. For everybody that's listening right now, because we're trying to get people to be comfortable with who they are, and what kind of advice would you give them if they're a little scared to make that transition?
Understandably, I can feel how they would be, but I mean, the world is so different today. I mean, me, when I was growing up, just being gay was like unheard of to an extent, and not something people wanted to talk about. And now you have trans issues on the news. So, I mean, it's really hard for me to grasp the people having difficulty with coming out and, being trans or gay or anything these days, because it's so everywhere now. Not saying it's easy at all. By no means, I don't think it is. But it's just hard for me to grasp the concept of people like being so scared, because I'm like, these are things that weren't even being discussed when I was young, and now you have them in the news and people are having dialogue about this. And so, for anybody that is still in the closet about being gay or trans, like, all I can say is there are people out there for you. Like, don't be so scared. There's plenty of education, and please definitely get that, because you don't want to do anything too soon before you really even know what you're doing with your body or anything like that. Just love yourself. Like, really look in the mirror and know how beautiful you are, how amazing you are, and how the world is just waiting for you to break it open. So we're out here. We're here for you. Take a deep breath, and it'll be all right.
And, I would say there is a lot of support systems. I'm a veteran, and when I go to the VA, they even have a support system at the VA now for transgender. And they actually assist.
The world is waiting.
Yeah. What do you think as far as transgender, like in sports and military and things of that nature? Do you think that would be fair? Like if a male wanted to, there is a male bodybuilder who transitioned to a female, and I believe he won a major pro contest as a female, but he was already a male bodybuilder. Do you think that he had an unfair advantage, or?
Not at all. Like, I can see where people would think that. However, I mean, trans are people just like everybody else. So, I mean, I don't think it's an unfair advantage or anything that, people are people.
Yeah, because you look at Fallon Fox, who's a MMA fighter, used to be a male, is now a female MMA fighter, and there's been a lot of controversy as far as does Fallon have an unfair edge and things of that nature, because the testosterone is going to be higher, of course, even though there's a transition.
Yeah, and I don't know too much about those athletes, but if they're taking hormones to live their life as a female, they're probably taking a testosterone blocker more than likely, and so really it's not the same thing as. But I don't really know too much about those athletes specifically.
You know, you as a transgender or performer, it would be great because we're in Texas, and you should actually come out to Austin. They have a lot of parades out here.
I love Texas. One of the biggest pageants, Miss KUSFA, is held there, and I went there for the first time a year or two ago. It was amazing. But I have not been to Austin yet.
Yeah, there's a huge community, and I think too that a lot of people may be afraid to come out because, you know, if they lack a real stable kind of support system, and that's why I wrote my book, the one that we were talking about. The book I wrote, it's complicated. Am I transgender? Because I'm really trying to tell people that it's okay, and you should, again, like you had mentioned, be true to yourself, because we only get one kick of the can of life, and if you can't go through this run happy, I really don't know what you're even doing here, because you're just you're selling yourself short, and it makes sense. And you know, where I'm from in Canada, we actually, I think in 2016, we had our first transgender judge come out, and it made worldwide news. And you know, it's amazing when you have people holding office, because like you said, it really shouldn't matter if you're transgender. If you have the qualifications for the office, the job, the athlete, it should be just given to you, whether you are gay or lesbian. Why should that matter? Why should that have to be a criteria?
Absolutely. I mean, people are people, and we all bleed the same, so it shouldn't matter at all.
Hey, Carla, for people who are looking for some kind of support and may want to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
My Facebook is probably the easiest way.
Okay. So,
yep, Carla Cox.
Are you working on anything right now other than the events that Alexandria was talking about that you want to promote?
Not that I can think of. This was the event, Augusta Pride, coming up June 21st to the 23rd, and that's in Augusta, Georgia. And then I'm doing Outfest in Columbia June 2nd. I'm preparing myself for those because those are in the summer heat, and I got to drink a lot of water, make sure I'm hydrated. But right now, those are the only events that I'm working on, and my show every Saturday and Friday.
Right. So you definitely staying busy, which is good, and you seem to be enjoying life, and you have a lot of confidence.
Absolutely. I'm so thankful to the Lord that I'm blessed in the ways that I am, and I am very, very happy with the things that I'm doing.
And a question for a lot of people out there, do you like to cook? And if you do or don't, what are some of your favorite foods that you like?
I like to cook. I don't say I can. I love Italian food. I love Spanish food. I love Chinese food. I love a lot of different food. And I like to cook however I can. I'm not really all good with the concoctions of the
So for the people listening that hasn't been to Columbia, South Carolina, what's the best restaurant there to eat at?
I just ate at Pasta Fresca yesterday with one of my girlfriends. It's so delicious. It's some of the best Italian food I've ever had. I don't think I've ever had anything there that was not good.
Oh, that's awesome.
Another question, too, is that how do you physically stay in shape? What are some of the things that you do for exercise to, you know, keep the figure that you have for performing and being able to fill out those awesome dresses?
Honestly, just performing. You would be surprised how hopping around for 3 minutes and 30 seconds is a workout. And doing that 6 times a week is just enough of a workout for me.
Right. And Timothy had asked you the question if you had advice, but I mean, if somebody came up to you and asked you, would you consider, like, if somebody wanted to volunteer at a Pride event, do you think that would give them good exposure in regards to the support that's in the Pride community?
Absolutely. I mean, being a part of any kind of Pride organization is a great way to meet people, just to see what kind of family is out there. So I definitely encourage that and think it'd be a great idea for someone to do.
Well, Carla, we appreciate having you on the show, and we're running.
Thank you guys so much for having me. You guys have been awesome, and this has been so cool.
Yeah, it has. It's been really cool, and hopefully we can get you back on in the future.
And you forgot to ask
absolutely anytime.
What were you saying, Alexander?
We forgot to ask you if you had any a particular ghost story that you wanted to share with us all.
No, I did ask.
Oh, okay.
I did ask. I asked way back in the beginning.
I'm so in tune with the interview here, but I thought at one of the clubs that you were at.
Nah.
Have I had any ghost stories from the club that I'm at?
Mm-hmm.
I've entered some pretty creepy clubs. Not that I can think of. No. Actually, no, that wasn't a ghost. That was
it's all right, Carla. Hey, we appreciate you you joining the show, and when this is over, we'll send you the appropriate links, okay?
Okay, thank you guys so much. I appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
You take care. Thank you.
Talk to you later.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, so that was Carla Cox. I don't even know if I'm still saying it right. Transgender, transsexual performer.
Transgender, yeah, transgender.
But I mean, Carla was saying that the only times he's in female clothes is when he's performing.
Or he sometimes goes out for dinners or something like that, dressed probably after a performance. So yeah. I mean, so that gives people a perspective that you don't always have to be in female attire 24/7. It's choice. It's all about personal choice.
Yeah. So there's somebody that you can reach out to if you're in the South Carolina area, Carla Cox. On Facebook, definitely a Pride member. And
she sits on the board of the Augusta Pride coming up.
Right, so a lot of people in Augusta and Georgia there, and South Carolina can contact her for anything, any questions y'all have, and anonymously through Messenger, I'm guessing.
And I think a really good message that would resonate with a lot of people out there is that if you have confidence in yourself and how you carry yourself in life, you can accomplish anything that you choose to, and your options are really limitless. So it's about being true to yourself and just having that confidence to get out into the world, be who you want to be, and don't be who society tells you should be. And again, a lot of this is touched on in my book. It's complicated, Am I Transgender? I hope you pick up your copy from Amazon. But she touched on a lot of things that are very important, that there's a huge support system for anybody that needs assistance, help, or is unsure, and they think they're going to be ostracized by coming out as transsexual or transgender.
Yeah, and so again, like you said, it's important to be comfortable with whatever you want to be.
Be comfortable in your own skin.
And if you're having questions about are you transgender or you're not transgender, then I definitely recommend you can purchase it on Amazon.com. It's the new book called It's Complicated, Am I Transgender? And so it's a very, very good book. And the fact that you touch on the history in the book all the way back to the Native Americans. There's even pictures in there of the Native Americans that's males that were living as females. Right,
and I did mention previously in the podcast too that two-spirited people, the name was really coined in 1990 in Winnipeg, and I think it's important that people, Indigenous, Aboriginal, Native American people were in tune with two-spirited people for several generations before it hit the mainstream media as it is today. So they embraced it, they accepted it, and they didn't ostracize people that were actually two-spirited people. And I think in society, or previous to now, with it being more visualized, vocalized, people were very ostracized. They were afraid of the retaliation. They were afraid of letting anybody in their inner circle know what their internal feelings were telling them.
Yeah, and so an upcoming guest, because we're not done with this topic, it's going to be this Sunday. We're going to have the Hell Barbie on, and so it's going to be very interesting.
And you said that she's into horror too. I mean, every guest that we have likes to, they're involved in horror, whether they love horror movies.
Well, the Hell Barbie is, to be honest with you, is nothing but a horror performer. And so it's going to be very interesting to have her on the show.
I'm looking forward to that as well, because that's somebody in the horror world. And again, like Carla said, you can touch base with her on Facebook at Carla Cox, and message her. You can see some of the upcoming events that are coming up in regards to her. And we're very thrilled at Tickle Trunk of Horrors to bring very different...
Claire Storm.
Claire Storm? Oh,
Claire
okay.
Storm is the Hell Barbie.
Okay, wow.
And you know what? As somebody, as a producer that's made 3 full-length feature films, I will tell you that I'm very impressed at the makeup work that Claire Storm does. So, yeah.
And makeup plays a huge part in horror, as all of you know. And it's just huge. And I mean, if you're not applying, you're not doing the makeup techniques properly, again, it's not going to come over to the audience as being realistic or professional.
Right. And so one thing I didn't talk about is this podcast plays on many different platforms. It plays on Spreaker.com, YouTube, and it plays on iTunes and sometimes Tumblr. I haven't shared it to Tumblr for quite some time, but it does play on Tumblr. The majority of our audience comes from Spreaker.com, although I think in order to follow us on Spreaker, you have to create an account with them to follow us. So we don't have, I think we got way more listeners to the podcast than we have followers, because it's such a pain in the ass for a lot of people to have to sign up just to follow us.
And I think a lot of what we're trying to get across in Tickle Trunk of Horror podcast is really, folks, educate yourself, inform yourself. There's a lot of topics that we bring to the forefront in our podcast. Do yourself a favor and just really educate yourself before you make a comment that may be derogatory about somebody or what they do in life. There's
a lot of people that's judgmental. And
never judge a book by its cover, because that's very, very true in every aspect of life. You don't know a person may be going through a struggle or what they're going through, and outward appearances, I know society tells us that we got to look like this, or we're going to end up being alone and we're not going to get anywhere, we're not going to get this job. I really think that's bull crap. But
there's a lot of transsexuals that are not in the entertainment community. There's a lot of transsexuals that don't perform, and so and they try to live as the female, and they don't perform at all. But when you mention the word transsexual or transgender, the first thing that pops into people's heads would be like adult films and something something very sexual or fetish or something of that nature. What transgender or transsexual, that's not what it is. That's not all that it is. That should not be the first thing that your mind goes to, because it's somebody who's, a lot of people out there that's living as women that was born males, and there's a lot of people out there living as males that were born females that are not in the adult industry or not in the performances.
They just have everyday jobs.
Yeah, everyday jobs. Yeah.
And you may not know that a person that you see as a female, how do you really know that they're not a transgender person? You're not going out of your way to look for that. They just want to be able to exist the way they feel true to themselves, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Well, a perfect example is I'm a Judeo-Christian, and I used to go to a synagogue in Austin, Texas, and forever there was a transsexual female in there, or transgender, however you want to respond to it. But and I did not know that this person was born a male, and they participated in the services and everything like that. So
I really think in society, no one has the right to tell another human being who they have to be. No one has that right. And you know, if you're born with specific anatomy and you develop these internal feelings that this particular anatomy is not you, it is your right to be who you want to be. You can't live your life for other people, and you cannot live your life based on what society again is trying to ram down your throat. It's not society's life. It is your life, and it is up to you to live life to the fullest, because we never know how much time we have here. So if you're not happy, I really don't know what the answer is, because your goal is not to make society happy. Your goal should be to make yourself happy for the time that you are here.
yes.
And that's a very powerful message, and a lot of us may have a hard time incorporating that in our everyday life. But really, I mean, it's very simple. You know, you've got to live your life for yourself, not for your parents or anybody else, because it's not your life.
Type in Some Like It Hot. For everybody out there, y'all can go to YouTube and type this song. It's by a band called Power Station. And it is a song called Some Like It Hot. That James Bond girl was in the video, and she's definitely a transsexual.
And a lot of people may have not known that. And I mean, there's a lot of people out there that, you know, you may have not known that they are now transsexual or transgender.
She was actually on the cover of Playboy as well. So
very interesting for all you. And like I said, please stop judging people, and do not, you know, use your own free will. And let people live their life the way they choose to.
right, and sometimes you got a Kumakante, and sometimes you got a Sikana Masuna. And we about to have to own Dago. So what I would like to say about that is there anything else that you want to mention as far as like what's going on in the social media world or anything of that nature?
You know what, I think in social media, like, you know, there's a lot of negative things that are happening in the world, and I think we're being inundated with negative energy. Please, let's don't add to the negative energy in the universe. Please try and, you know, omit positive vibes. There's so many things about war and controversies out there. Let's don't add to it, and let's just try and be as positive as we can. And you know what? Pay it forward. If you see somebody that looks like they could use a cup of coffee, homeless, why don't you buy them something, and you know, the feelings will resonate that you've done a good deed.
You know what hurts the transsexual community and transgender movement? It's idiots. The idiots that think that they can go into female restrooms with a full-grown beard, wearing Carhartt work gear, and tell the people that they're a female. If the transgender movement is to really make changes in the world, you have to not support the idiots, because it just seems like in the gay community, a lot of people will get behind these people that are idiots. And that really hurts the movement. And so it's a rational way of thinking to say, okay, if somebody actually looks enough like a female for them to be able to use the restroom, the problem occurs when a regular male just walks into the women's restroom. You can't support that. I mean, there has to be some kind of rational thinking within the gay community and within the gay culture. There has to be rational thinking. Just like in regular culture, I don't know how to, what you call it, heterosexual culture, I should say. In heterosexual culture, you're going to have idiots in heterosexual culture, just like in the homosexual culture. So you can't back up these people because it hurts your agenda.
I think in everything you do, and in particular this example that you've expressed, common sense has to prevail. You can't go hardcore trying to prove a point. Please, let's use some common sense in regards to pursue the movement. There's always a right way and a wrong way to do everything that you do in life, and certainly that would be, in my mind, a very wrong way trying to prove the issue, folks. Very wrong.
And we're definitely trying to help the transgender community, but we got to be rational about this and have people not submit ridiculous ideas, because it just hurts the movement. So
we're trying to help the movement in a positive way.
Right. So again, on Amazon, you can purchase the book. It's complicated. Am I Transgender? Go to Amazon, type that in. It's by Alexandria Anthony. That's it.
Thank you.